Hey guys, so today's video is about 8 passengers. I've spoken about them before in the past, same thing. And something massive has happened recently. There's been some kind of a 8 passengers revolution in the family. Anyway, I've talked about them and there's a bit of a revolution. Subscribe to that bell, like, comment for engagement. All the links will be in the description and I'll see you now. I thought I was ending my video. So let's just talk about 8 passengers if you don't know. There's a family of 8 passengers. They have like a lot of kids, so it ends up being, 8 passengers. And they're very, I guess you could say, right-wing leaning. They're kind of like Trump supporters and that kind of thing. It's not that, I know political gets a bit political in the comment section, so I'm just saying right-wing, religious, very conservative values in the family, but sometimes leaning towards very problematic. I think there are a lot of people that have conservative values that don't end up looking like this. I think there's a spectrum and they're like pretty further on the spectrum. For example, they, as punishment, will take beds away from kids, so they have to sleep on the floor or like a beanbag or a sofa. They will take away Christmas presents. So there was a situation where a child seemed ungrateful and they basically didn't receive any presents and had to watch the other kids open presents during Christmas. I'm sure there was another way to teach that versus ruining a once a year celebration. Like, I think I never really understand that, because it's like, unless your kid really did the most like abhorrent stuff, I think that once a year thing, like, just leave it. There are a few celebrations where you're like, is this really the time where I need to be punishing my kids? Like birthdays, Christmas, Easter if you celebrate it, Halloween maybe even, like, oh, not letting your kid go out for Halloween because they said something rude to you. Like, I'm sure there are other ways of, yes, you can go out for Halloween, it's a once a year thing, because like realistically, is what they did worth a year of waiting for them to be able to celebrate that thing again? Does that make sense? Like, is the little thing that they did worth essentially a year of punishment? So like, taking the presents away just ruins the vibe at Christmas, right? Because the kids are going to be upset, and then actually what's going to happen is a cycle of them being really upset on Christmas, getting a bit snappy with you during Christmas because they're watching their other siblings opening presents, and then you're gonna be like, see, my kids give me so much attitude, when in reality they're just upset because they're kids and they don't really understand, right? Like, I just think, not the best parenting. Not that I'm a parent. Not giving kids food for not remembering to pack it. Ruby and Kevin are the parents. I'm not going to say any other names of the kids, except for the adult kid that I'll be talking about. He's not a kid, obviously. The adult child of Ruby and Kevin. She's the only one that I will be naming. So one of their daughters, who was about 5 at the time, forgot to pack her lunch, and her teachers basically noticed and messaged Ruby and said like, hey, do you want to bring her lunch? Because she doesn't have anything to eat. And she said no, she should have remembered to pack her lunch, and I actually don't want any of you guys to give her food. I don't want any students to give her food, I don't want any teachers to give her food, so she learns a lesson. If I was packing my lunch at the age of 5, the lack of nutrition and lack of like any out of the 5 that would be in that lunchbox would be crazy. Like, I think, yeah, it's nice to get your kids involved in activities. Like, I think it's really good to get your kids involved in cleaning from an early age and cooking from an early age, and maybe even packing their lunchbox, being like, hey, what do you want? An apple or a banana? What do you want? A sandwich with tuna or chicken? I don't know. But to put that whole responsibility, it's as if you had like a 5-year-old and said, okay, well, now you're responsible for mopping the whole house, and if you don't do it correctly, you'll be punished. Like, I'm sure there are ways of teaching your kids to do things that are like slow and appropriate for the age group that they are in. Complaining at school about a censored song being used. So like, only the appropriate bit of a song was being used, but she didn't like the whole song. So she essentially decided to go in and like do formal complaints, letter after letter, embarrassing her daughter, who's like entering like her teen phase, because of 10 seconds of a song. The lighting is going to keep on changing because the weather in the UK right now is just all over the place. Showing intimate things on camera, such as a sex talk and a period talk. I just think it's so embarrassing, so humiliating, and so exploitative of an intimate situation between a parent and a child. Like, I just don't think it's appropriate in any way. And sending one of the teenage boys away to a troubled teens camp, which, if you guys watch the Paris Hilton YouTube documentary where she talked about how abusive those camps are, where they don't actually teach you discipline, they don't teach you good manners, they don't teach you good values, they teach you fear. It's a fear-based tactic because a lot of parents, a large amount of parents don't really understand how to discipline their kids and how to get their kids to respect them. So instead of getting their kids to respect them, they get their kids to fear them, because in some parents' minds, fear and respect is the same thing, when it isn't. The moment your kid turns 18, they're gonna leave because they're scared of you. Like, why would they stay with someone who is a fear for them, right? But if they respect you, they will respect you. Like, I just don't really. Anyway, so he was sent off to this troubled teens camp, and it's because he pranked one of his younger brothers about going to Disney when they didn't. Like, it's just like it's what I said about the Christmas presents. Is what he did worth being at troubled teens camp for a few months? Like, I just don't really he pranked one of his brothers. Like I'm sure that's the sibling dynamic, right? Like older siblings will usually prank the younger siblings, and they'll be like, hey, don't tell mom. Like, I just don't really see this as such a big deal, and it should have just been like go unload the dishwasher for me and like mop the floors or something. Like that would have been mine. Just like, hey, like do something nice for me, I guess. Or do something nice for your brother. Go buy him a toy or something because you clearly like upset him. That would have been just like, okay, and that's it. Like no one's got any resentment. Now he's gonna resent his brother for this weird, like, do you know what I mean? It's just a bit odd. And then when he came back from the camp, he didn't have a bedroom and he didn't have a bed. So he's sleeping in the living room because he lost his bedroom privileges. There are also things about like them not being able to use specific bathrooms that are the nice bathrooms in the house and not being allowed to use certain things. I just don't really understand the family dynamic. After this, they started a group called Connections after they stopped posting on their kind of main YouTube channel because they were getting so much backlash. They started a separate group called Connections, where they mainly do on Facebook, but also on their channel on YouTube. And it's to discuss more problematic things, but like they amped it up. Like, so the things they would say that they would get backlash for, they've now taken that, amped it up, and then peddled it only to parents who agree with their mindset. So for example, their daughter is apparently very manipulative, like their young daughter is very manipulative because she doesn't actually have ADHD. She just manipulates them into doing what she wants. So they're not going to try and medicate her or take her to therapy or actually deal with ADHD as a mental health issue. They're just going to call her manipulative, blame it all on her, make her the evil child, and then not deal with the root issue of her behavior. Wonderful parenting, if you ask me. Ignore the mental health issues and blame it on the kid being evil. How you shouldn't feel the need to accept a trans family member because that's like PC culture and you don't have to do that. So just being like completely disrespectful to your family because that's apparently really cool. And then recently the mum actually started a separate group on Facebook with another mum called Mums of Truth, where they peddle a few things such as you should change your kids if they're gay or trans, or don't live in the truth, which is, truth for them is like the religious kind of very extreme Christian viewpoints. So like anything that's the truth is just like the problematic beliefs that they have, but they call it the truth so it sounds more reputable, right? So it sounds more like it's got like some weight behind it. So it's anything like if your kid is anything slightly left or right from what they believe is like the truth, you should change them. You shouldn't accept your kid for what they are. You should just, you know, the truth. Don't give kids any privacy at any point in their life. Control what shows they can watch, who they can talk to, what they do, read their diary, read their like everything. Complete lack of privacy, and that's one way to make a child feel completely violated. And we are going to get into the startings of the kids rebelling. Some of the kids are way too young right now to like see what's going on, right? But one of them is clearly seen the light and is like, whoa, this is crazy. Yeah, that's just like, I understand kids being like having to be monitored to a certain extent just because there is so much danger in the world, yada yada, but to completely deny them privacy is disgusting. And it is one way to have your kids completely not respect you and just want nothing to do with you, because privacy is a basic human right. And of course, we're not mistaking letting your kids do whatever they want, message pedophiles on the internet. Like, no, of course, like have internet safety talks with them, you know, ask them like, hey, can I see what you're doing on the internet? Yada, yada. Build a connection there where the kids are not afraid to tell you things, but just to completely deny them any privacy, like self-autonomy, is not the way that you're going to get respect. It's actually the opposite. The co-host of that Mums of Truth group is called Jodi Hildebrandt. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she's not the best. She's actually a marriage counselor who has many negative reviews, and not just recently because she's working with, because it could be a thing of like, oh, you know, the 8 passengers, like haters are now swarming to, you know, flood her with negative reviews. But some of these reviews date back to 8 years ago when like her and Ruby were not in business at all, so clearly she's just not the best. She also had her license put on probation for violating state law for discussing a client at like a church meeting because he was struggling with pornography addiction, and she decided to discuss his issue at church to be like, he's not following the truth. And obviously that's not allowed when you're a therapist. Like, you're not supposed to discuss clients because there's that client therapist privilege. And then her license was permanently revoked for trying to like further after that. But apparently she's been trying to destroy marriages. She makes marriages seem worse than they are. She makes marriages seem unfixable just to break up marriages that she doesn't seem to think are fine. Like, just complete, like, you'll go to this marriage counselor being like, we're gonna come out this stronger than ever, and she's just like, no, you guys are not good together. And it's like, yeah, of course, sometimes a counselor can say that if they really believe that the relationship is like doomed, but she wouldn't even try that. She'd just be like, I personally don't think it's working out. This doesn't follow my truth, so I think you guys should just break up. So she doesn't have a license anymore. at all. Like, she doesn't have her license. Permanently banned. Kevin and Jodi actually are beefing right now, and I'm gonna preface this with, it seems to be that Kevin and Ruby are actually separated because he apparently has moved out and she is not wearing her ring in any of the videos, and Kevin deactivated his Instagram after being constantly bombarded with questions about the separation in his DMs and in the comment section, so he then deactivated his Instagram. But before he did that, he actually unfollowed the Moms of Truth page, which, you know, so now that we know that, he's actually beefing Jodi because she talks about, in one of these clips they post on the Moms of Truth website, she talks about someone that works at BYU, which is one of those like Christian right-leaning universities where a lot of people are very conservative over there, have very conservative values, and he apparently works at BYU. And she talks about someone that works at BYU and how they don't follow the truth, they don't live in the truth, and accuses him of not following like their life principles without actually naming him, even though the question had nothing to do with BYU or employees at BYU, just about like following the truth. And she uses this someone that works at BYU anecdote of someone that's not living in the truth but claims that they live in the truth publicly. Like, clearly it's a dig at Kevin. So there seems to be something about why Kevin and Ruby separated, for why he's not living in the truth. Now, until now, people thought that it was Kevin that was pushing Ruby into these conservative values. But now people are wondering if it's Ruby that was pushing Kevin into these conservative values, because it seems like Kevin's the one that's not living in the truth and Ruby is still peddling these views. So now people are wondering, like, who pushed who into which direction, right? Or is there some kind of infidelity? Is there some kind of, like, you know, one of these things, but we're not going to speculate on that further. There is so much going on. So one of the daughters, who I'm actually going to name because she is now a full-fledged adult, she has moved out of the family, she is called Shari, and she moved out recently to be an adult. Good for her. I think moving out is a great point of like becoming an adult and just like developing yourself further. I think if you're financially capable of moving out, I think you should, to not stunt your like emotional and adult growth. I think staying too long at home will stunt your growth because you're an adult but you're still being treated like a child, so that will stunt like your growth process. So I think if you can move out, obviously with the economic crisis, a bit difficult, so take that as what it is. But Shari moves out, good for her. She actually changed a lot of her branding on Instagram, etc., to not include 8 passengers in it anymore. So she's like not included in the family marketing anymore, which the family marketing is right-leaning, conservative, traditional views. She also unfollowed Trump, which that was like a big thing in the family, obviously, like the political views. So clearly she's distancing herself from the political views. She has followed more left-leaning pages and publications, which would then show that she's kind of even further separating herself from the family. Now, Ruby's siblings recently spoke out against the pages that Ruby and Kevin have been starting, e.g. Connections and the Moms of Truth. Now we're linking it together because the siblings are speaking out against Ruby. And last Christmas and Thanksgiving, Ruby and Kevin didn't spend it with the rest of the family, like Ruby's family, because actually Ruby's siblings all have YouTube channels. Well, most of them have YouTube channels or some kind of a social media presence, and they all film Christmas and Thanksgiving and they vlog it. And Ruby and Kevin were nowhere to be seen. And normally, you know, with these more traditional families, they would like to do the traditional spend time together at Christmas and Thanksgiving. So it's very odd that they didn't. And it seems to be that just this family doesn't agree with any of Ruby and Kevin's point of views and they just don't want to spend time with them. There was also some stuff about the mum of all the siblings was starting to fall ill and people were having to split up kind of time to look after her. And no one was mentioning Ruby, even though she lives quite close to the parents. They were talking about people that like live further away rather than Ruby who lives closer. So clearly like no one wants to hang out with them. Even at a time of need when someone is ill, they're just like, we'd rather not. Talking about Shari has actually unfollowed the mom group, the Moms of Truth, even though she was actually involved in it at first. And recently Ruby's sister called Bonnie released a video called I Said It Was Okay to Cry on the Internet, where she talks about how anxiety and depression has been a bit of a topic on the internet lately, which, if you guys don't know, Ruby and Kevin, when they were doing their connections thing, talked about how, even Ruby on her own in the Moms of Truth, they talked about how mental health issues are not real. They're basically all in your head. Like they talked about ADHD with their daughter and how medicating yourself is not the best way to go. Therapy is not the best way to go. Like there are so many things that you can do, allegedly, that will help you with depression and anxiety. And that's basically a bit fake and all in your head. And you should follow the truth and do what the truth says, and which isn't medication and isn't really therapy. It's like go on a jog and like pray and stuff. So she said that it's been a bit of a topic. Anxiety, depression, it's been a bit of a topic lately. So that's already hinting at her talking about Ruby, and that it makes people who have it sound weak and it's an illness like any other and should be treated as such with treatment and potentially medication, which she's actually been on for a while now. Like I said, Ruby has spoken about, you know, how mental health isn't really real. So this is crazy that Bonnie, without really naming Ruby or Kevin, would go out and further, say that like, hey, I'm distancing myself from their point of view. And probably that's why they don't spend Christmas and Thanksgiving anymore. It's not even just that Ruby and Kevin say things that they don't agree with. It's that they say things that go completely against what the family is going through. Like clearly Bonnie's going through anxiety and depression, and they are there slating people that have anxiety and depression that take medication. This is a personal attack now that Bonnie feels. Does that make sense? Like it stops being just a difference of opinions and it starts becoming a personal attack at some point. Bonnie also says that everyone deserves love, which goes against Ruby's parenting. Like, it's complete contradictions. Now, someone who's very close to the family wrote a Facebook statement about how toxic and manipulative the family is, and how when they first started out, they were quite bearable. Like, they just kind of tried to do their best, show their lifestyle, show a more traditional family unit, and just be a traditional family who vlogs. And then it slowly started becoming a toxic parenting scheme, manipulative, problematic, and they just started digging more and more. Like every time they got called out, or every time they had backlash, they would just further go into that. Instead of being like, hey, we might have messed up, like let's try and work on our parenting, they would just lean into it because that's what was really giving them attention. And then they were able to move that to these little like parenting groups where they can get a very niche audience that also believes in their parenting styles. So they just started leaning more and more into it, and apparently they became unbearable even in real life. And this is someone that's dealt with them in real life. Now you're going to wonder, like, how do they know that this person knows this family? Well, it's because Shari actually commented under Shari's official account commented under this post and said, thank you for your courage and wise counsel, which means that this person who's been dealing with this family for years now and knows how they function has actually helped Shari to probably leave this very toxic situation, because she said, thank you for your wise counsel. This person was probably like, hey, Shari, like, if you want to escape, I can help you. Like, probably giving her advice, making her feel safe in her decision making, talking to her probably privately and discussing kind of the best way that she can distance herself from the family. And I'm glad she had someone in her life to do that for her, who saw this family become toxic and manipulative and said, no, that's enough. Like, you can leave. 5 of Ruby's family members also liked the post. We're starting to see the family dynamic fall apart a little bit, for good reason as well. Like, I just feel so bad for the younger kids because they are being indoctrinated with this viewpoint, and there is a chance that they're going to grow up and not take Shari's path. They're going to stay in this and continue that cycle of then having their own children and behaving in that same way. But I'm hoping some of them also find the light. And mainly with Shari leaving and kind of setting that precedent of like, I've left. Maybe some of her siblings, once they start growing up, they can keep in touch with Shari and maybe they can all escape the toxic and manipulativeness. So I'm just popping in because there was a bit of an update on the story, and I basically left it because I needed to collect stuff, film it. It just wasn't enough for a whole separate video, so I just wanted to put it all into one video. But Shari actually posted an Instagram story addressing the whole situation, so like actually speaking out, not just commenting on someone else speaking out. And she does clarify that she is not in contact with the family as of right now, but she does want privacy for herself and for others. So like, please don't DM her being like, tell us the tea about, like, she will speak up when she is ready to say things. Like, she was just ready to comment under the post, or she was ready to post an Instagram story, but DMing her or, demanding that she gives us more than she has given us is harmful, because she is coming from what looks to be a kind of toxic / abusive household in some ways, like whether that's physically or mentally or whatever it is. So when she speaks out, she'll speak out, and until then we just kind of have to take what she gives us, if that makes sense. She also says in that post, and I quote, many people are working on this situation, which makes me feel like her going no contact, it has been kind of like a collaborative effort, because she did comment under that person's post on Facebook with thank you for your counsel, which makes me think that someone has been helping her and like guiding her through this whole situation. But also it feels like there are other family members kind of navigating this situation. Ruby is posting like usual on Instagram stories about like random things that she's doing, so clearly she's not publicly like, maybe inwardly she's affected by this, but outwardly she's looking very normal. And the person from the initial Facebook post has spoke out again and said that Shari, Chad, and Kevin don't have contact with Ruby or the 5 youngest children, which is very sad that siblings are being torn apart as well. Like, it's fine that parents divorce or people stop talking to their parents, but to have siblings be torn apart because of this is sad. But Shari and Chad ultimately did what they had to do for their own mental sanity, even if that does mean not having contact with their siblings. And apparently there has been talks that connections and like delving so deep into that toxic parenting style and talking about it has made Ruby even worse as a parent. It's made her violent towards her kids, and apparently CPS has been called multiple times and currently are investigating the family, which is obviously very sad to hear. And she has also left them home alone while at like Connections retreats, and they're also not attending school. Now, if all of that is true, that is a neglectful and abusive household, allegedly, if that is all true, I said. Now, Jodi is allegedly living with Ruby right now, so they're like working on this Connections mums of truth thing. They are now living together, and that apparently happened shortly after Kevin moved out. Jodi and Ruby are starting like a new version of Connections, which is called Connections Insiders, where you can get further insight into how to fix your life. It's behind a paywall and people can like DM and ask questions, but it's $21 a month and you only get access to the app and you get to ask one question. And then if you want to ask another question, you have to pay extra per question. And apparently the Connections Insiders thing is to help people with poor mental health, which we know their opinions on mental health, and Jodi has had her license suspended, so I don't think they are in any position to discuss mental health. A failing marriage, so that's a very topical topic with Ruby, and struggling as a parent, and among other things. But these are all things that these people are not qualified to talk about in any capacity. And I just think it's so harmful to, one, put it behind a paywall as well, like to think that your advice is so valuable that you should get paid for it, when one of them has their license revoked and the other one isn't dealing well with any of the things that they're going to be giving other people advice about. That's just what I wanted to pop in with. I'll see you guys another time. That's it for today's video. Subscribe, hit that bell, like, comment for engagement, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.